All right. Good evening. I'm sure this is the third time people are seeing me today. Same clothes, just to prove that everything's on the up and up here. We're with David Rubin tonight from 401 Sports. We got a ton to talk about the Mets and Major League Baseball. And David's got a little printout from, I'm guessing that's the press conference from earlier today.
Yes, sir.
Max
My
Scherzer is a
boys,
Met.
Uncle Steve and Uncle Max.
Uncle Mac, the uncles. Hopefully
Yes.
bringing a championship to the Mets here in the next couple of years. But again, David, thanks for being here. It's been a while.
Yes, sir. Been a while. I was sick for a little bit and been crazy busy. 401 Sports keep me very busy, and this insane baseball off season, right? The abbreviated baseball season keeping me crazy busy too, which is a good thing for Mets fans.
And if
Uh,
I was going to say, if people aren't aware, tonight at 11:59, the owners are locking out the players. Now, you know, I don't think there's a need to panic just yet. This
no,
isn't like the strike of '94, the lockout of '95. We're doing it probably at the best time that you can have a lockout because we got 4 months until the season starts, and
right.
hopefully this leads to some changes in the collective bargaining agreement. But the reality is, in about 4.5 hours, all this free agent activity, I think, is going to stop.
Yep.
We're not going to see any trades. We're not going to see any real
No Rule
baseball
5.
movement.
No Rule 5 like we've been looking forward to. Yeah.
Yeah. So, tonight could be interesting. I'd imagine that GMs are going to be trying to get some things done tonight at 11:59 or before then. But yeah, let's talk about the Mets Black Friday acquisitions from last week. I'll be honest, and I'm a big Mets fan. I'm not the biggest Mets fan I know, but I don't know if there's anyone bigger. I didn't even know the Mets were in the running for Scherzer because all I heard was West Coast. I heard Dodgers. I heard Padres. This kind of, for me, came out of nowhere. Walk me through your head, David, as far as how quickly things happened for Scherzer and the Mets.
Okay, well, first let's go back to the trade deadline for a minute, right? All we heard was in June and July that he wanted to go to the West Coast. Originally, the deal was going to go to the Padres. Eventually, he went to the Dodgers. Okay. At the time, all we heard was that he wants to go West Coast, West Coast, West Coast. A couple things to that. He wanted to stay in the National League. That was first and foremost because he knew the hitters. It was easy for him. He wouldn't have to make the big adjustment. Second of all, he was hurting. He had a number of injuries, which is unusual for him. And he's a gamer. He tries not to miss games. So he felt that going to a warm weather climate was going to help him a lot more than going, let's say, to like New York or Philadelphia or any other East team that was in on it. And he wanted a shot at winning a World Series again. Cannot blame a guy who's going to be 37 years old for wanting another. You can't blame anyone for wanting another shot at World Series, especially someone who's going towards the end of a Hall of Fame career, right? So he was really excited to go to the Dodgers, but the media overplayed the whole I don't want to go to the East Coast thing. What was very interesting, it was said to me about 3 weeks ago, was, hey, if the Mets get into this, there's two things that could potentially happen. First of all, Boris wants to right the relationship with the Mets because if you remember a couple of years ago, he called out the Wilpons, and Conforto is one of his clients. He knows that Conforto's not coming back. He should be somewhere else. He should be in a more hitter-friendly park. He needs to change of scenery. We know all that. But Boris, doesn't like to be shut out anywhere, and especially when you got the richest owner in baseball, right? He wants to put Cone back on the map and being able to negotiate with him. That's number one. Number two, the other thing that was said to me, which was more key, is that, hey, do you know where Max Scherzer, my friend was asking me, do you know, he's a scout, baseball scout. He said, you know where Max Scherzer lives? I said, I have no idea. I thought maybe like Arizona because, he had played. He said, he lives in Jupiter, Florida. Now, I've been to Jupiter. I used to go to, when I would go down to Florida to see my best friend who's still down there, we would go to games at Port St. Lucie, but I think it was the Orioles, if maybe they're still there, but they were there at one point. So we went to Jupiter to see a couple games. Jupiter to Port St. Lucie is like a 20 to 30-minute ride, depending on like time of day. So it's like a nothing drive. As you know, a lot of the Mets live permanently in Port St. Lucie, and even guys who've been traded or have gone elsewhere have kept their homes down there because you get a lot of house for your money. Very inexpensive compared to like big cities, and the area has gotten much better over the years. It's become a full grown city where 25 years ago it was like a gas station and a couple of pizzerias or whatever. Now it's a full blown city, it's a Costco, everything. So it's very different. So it's become a great place to live. He lives 25 minutes, 30 minutes away. So he was back in the running again with the Mets if the Mets are willing to come to the table with substantial money. I hear it was the third year that really made the difference. The thing I also heard about Max is that, we all know he's a gamer. We all know he's a tough guy. We all know he's a really smart pitcher. What made the difference for him is being able to have that third year, but the opt-out after 2. Interesting. Opt-out works both ways, right? He can opt out if the Mets aren't doing well, if he feels that they're not competing, he doesn't want to be there. Or he can opt out if he's just tired of playing. Yes, it's a lot of money to walk away from, right? $43 million is life-changing money for any human being. But then when you realize he already had a $210 million contract, and by the way, that contract had a substantial amount of deferred money. So starting in 2022, he's going to be getting $15 million a year from the Nationals for the next 7 or 9 years, something like that. So he if he didn't do a thing, if he never played again, he's already getting $15 million a year in deferred money on top of the money that he's getting from the Mets. So money is not an issue for him. So if he decides in 2 years, you know what, this is great, I'm done, opts out, and he does not have to continue to play. He doesn't, unlike other players, he doesn't strike me as the sort who is going to show up just to take the money. The other thing that's very, very interesting that I'm really excited about, there are 8 players on the exec council, 8 current players on the exec council who are negotiating as part of the CBA, upcoming CBA. Max is one of them. Sitting to his right will be his now teammate, Francisco Lindor. You got to think Max is a great clubhouse guy. You got to think he's going to have a real positive effect on Lindor. Lindor's a gamer too. Look, don't get me wrong. He leaves everything on the field. But, he's still immature. He's an immature 28. He's still a lot, or 27. Still a lot like a kid. And then you put him and Baez together. It's like 2 kids having the run of the house, while mom and dad are on vacation. And that's what it felt like. And I think Max brings a really good adult voice to the room. And he himself said he has seen what the crowds are like in New York. He said it's going to be nice to pitch for those fans instead of being destroyed by those fans for a change. The fan base is definitely an attractive thing to players like him who are gamers, who do appreciate fans. Obviously, money talks, and it's always going to be money. It's always going to be number 1, number 2, number 3 money. And when you realize that he's on that exec committee, it means that he has to push really hard to get the most money because he's helping set that example for other players. At the same time, he wouldn't have come for the money if he didn't think that Steve Cohen was onto something, if he didn't think that Billy Epper was onto something. And don't for a minute discount the fact that they just brought in a great fielding center fielder in Marte. They brought in an excellent team guy in Escobar, who is best friends with Mr. Dozier, Brian Dozier. Dozier and Max are really good friends. And so they spoke, and Dozier told Max, hey, Escobar is an amazing dude. You're going to love playing with him. You're going to love him being behind you. And by the way, his defense is underrated. He's a much better defender than some of the guys we're making him out to be. He does well at third. He does well at second. He's going to be fine for us. Kanha is a very good fielder and a really good hitter. And I think having fielders like that added to the equation makes it a more enticing place for pitchers to play. Guys like DeGrom and guys like Scherzer are old school. They're very cerebral. They're very into the game itself. They study obsessively, and they like to have a say in what their team is doing. And as Steve Cohn said, he felt very much like as much as they were interviewing Max, he was interviewing them. And they spent a substantial amount of time together. It was Max and his wife. It was Billy Epler. I'm not sure if Epler's wife was there. Steve Cohn and his wife, and possibly Sandy and maybe Sandy's wife. I'm not sure about that. I just know that there was a family atmosphere where Steve Cohn and Alex were whining and dining him big time, and his wife. And they really put the effort out there, and they went the extra year. And they convinced him that they're going to spend the money to do what it takes. Ultimately, the Angels made a big push. We got very lucky. I mean, yeah, I love the Angels. Second favorite team. But I'm really glad he's a Met because I think he's going to put the perfect coda on that Hall of Fame career by helping win a World Series next to Jacob deGrom. And I think you're seeing one, I'm not going to say greatest, but overused hyperbole, but one of the greatest 1-2 punches that we've ever seen in baseball. Hard to beat Spahn and Sane, right? Hard to beat some of the Maddox and Glavine, or Maddox and Smoltz, or Maddox, Glavine and Smoltz, or any other combo you want. It's even hard to beat Seaver and Kuzman, right? But I'm just really excited that I think the two most exciting pitchers in the game, two most cerebral pitchers in the game, are now both ours. Pretty amazing.
I'm extremely excited. Now, does this impending lockout have anything to do with the fact that we still don't have a manager?
Yes. Great question. This became like another trade deadline, right, for players. GMs know once midnight tonight strikes, 11:59 actually, there's going to be no more player transactions for an undefined amount of time. Could be a week, but the reality is, if you ask me to go to Vegas and bet, the reality is probably early to mid-January would be my guess as to how long it's going to take to hash this out. If both sides are coming at this the right way, unfortunately, there's so much posturing and pandering and everything else that goes on. If they're both coming at this hard and they're both willing to deal and they're both being realist, which almost never happens in these kind of things, but if they were being realist, you could say maybe get it done in 7 to 14 days. Reality is they're going to each beat their chest like King Kong in the first week. They're going to do their stupid statements. Week 2, they're still beating their chest, but the realization is, hey, Christmas is coming. We want to be done. Hey, spring training is coming. We want to be done. Hey, there's a lot of players that still need to go places. So my best guess would be at least a month before additional players can move. You're not going to have your Rule 5. You're not going to be able to trade. You're not going to be able to sign free agents. So what does that leave? Well, during this time frame between December 1st and the end of the year, the Mets are going to be able to make a lot of people happy, and they're going to turn around a lot of people's Christmas inside the game. They'll make us happy too, but now they have the ability to discuss all the coaches that are still out there and figure out who their coaching staff is going to be, what that's going to look like. They're going to be able to hire additional operations staff. There are plenty of people who are not currently with teams, and there are plenty of people who Billy Epler will probably poach over the next couple of weeks, right? And best of all, he and Oakland are the only teams that are looking for a manager right now, and it seems like Oakland's going to promote from within. So Billy Epler has the time now that all of his first 2 weeks on the job have literally been frantic. This guy's been flying like crazy, doing everything to get all these players in-house, make all the important transactions happen. Now he can kind of slow down of sorts and actually have all the manager interviews that he needs to do. He's got his feedback already from the existing ops team. They've discussed what type of manager will work best with the staff they already have and how they envision the culture moving forward. And they're going to start the interviews, I would say in earnest, probably next week. I would guess, if I had to guess, I would say it's going to be at least a 2-week interview process, because as quickly as Billy was moving on the player side, I think that's going to be the opposite on the managerial side, because they're trying to be a little bit more deliberate. They want to make sure they don't have another Callaway incident on their hands, another Jared Porter type incident on their hands. They want to fully vet their candidates, both as manager and as coaches, and then also front office. So I don't see them jumping into anything. And the reality is, if they want Buck Showalter, if they want Bruce Bochy, if they want Joe Espada, if they want Clint Hurdle, if they want John Farrell, if they want any of these guys, it's not like there are 7 teams out there bidding for their services. So Mets pretty much have an open path to every candidate other than whomever Oakland's going to promote from within. So they're in the catbird seat for a change. Yeah, it would have been nice to, or I'm Brad. Let me throw Brad Osmus's name up there too. Sorry, it would be nice if we were able to get Melvin. That would have been great. There's another Bob Guerin's out there. There's a lot of quality manager candidates available, and we can speculate till the cows come home. I think Joe Espada sounds like he would probably become a great manager, but do the Mets want to make another first-time manager there, in that seat this year? Do they want to make that kind of decision again, like they did with Luis, or do they want that proven vet who's battle-tested like a Showalter? Then the other issue that comes in with a guy like Showalter, he's been known as a control freak. I don't know that I call him a control freak, but I know that he likes to get involved in every detail. He's a details guy. He's also a brilliant strategist. So the question you have to ask yourself, are players in 2021 going to react positively to a guy like that? And is he going to be able to incorporate the even greater reliance on analytics in his game plan? Or is he going to be taking offense to, some 34-year-old Dartmouth grad telling Buck Showalter where to move his players and when to make a pitching change, right? So there's a real potential sea change happening in that desk. You might see an old school guy who worked with Dusty, worked with La Russa. It's working with well, it could work with Madden in California and for the Angels if they had any kind of pitching. Do you bring in one of those old school guys? Always love those kind of guys, always have, right? But that's what we grew up with. We grew up with the Sparky Andersons and the Earl Weavers and the Danny Murtaughs and the Bill Verdens, rest his soul, who just passed. You grew up with those guys, so that's what we knew, right? But the reality is, once upon a time, Whitey Herzog was an outfielder, and then he was in the Mets front office, and then he became a manager. So these guys had to have a chance. So then you say to yourself, would it be better if a guy like Espada, who's been the Astros bench coach for a number of years, who's been on a World Series winning team, he knows what it takes. By all accounts, everyone who knows him think he's a brilliant baseball guy. Does it pay to take a guy like that and give him his first shot, at the managerial table? Or do you bring a retread like a Clint Hurdle or Brad Osmus, who maybe were great managers but didn't have the right team? And are they the next Joe Torre? People forget, or they don't want to remember, there is a difference, that Joe Torre was not a great manager of the Mets, but he didn't have anything to work with. He was not a great manager with St. Louis or Atlanta, but again, he had very little to work with. It wasn't until he went to the Yankees, and the old saying, anyone could have managed that team. But the reality is, no, not anyone could have managed that team. There were so many egos and so much gelling that needed to happen. And Joe Torre needed to be the respected caretaker in the room who could make all the important decisions at that time, when there wasn't the reliance yet on analytics, to keep George's ego in check, keep the GMs okay and happy, and keep all those players in check. So, I think it's unfair. I'm not a big Torre fan as a person. As a human being, fine. As a person, not the biggest Torre fan. But I respect the job that he did there. And so you wonder, is one of these retreads the next Joe Torre to be? Right? A lot of food for thought here, Joe. A lot of food for thought.
That's actually, you're making some really good points, because I guess if I had a choice, I would prefer that they did sign someone like Showalter or Bochy before they would hire like an Osmus or a Hurdle. Right. I'd actually be more willing to get a quote hot first-time guy than a Hurdle or an Ausmus, because I think both of those guys have had 2 chances now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And they weren't really great at either stop. And I don't know. I personally think, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think even despite this, which looks to be a really good competitive roster for 2022, I still think there's a chance, even after bringing in Epler to be the GM, that if you still go after a David Stearns for 2023, he's going to bring in his own guy. There's going to be, I'm not saying there's going to be like a full house cleaning.
Right.
But, usually if something like that happens, you tend to have your eye on a guy, from outside of the organization. But I don't know. I think right now, my guess is going to be that Showalter is going to be the manager for the Mets.
Very possible. You brought up an interesting point when you said David Stearns. So Epler and Stearns are very, very good friends. In fact, I believe Stearns is Epler's best friend in the game. I would have no doubt that if Stearns was brought in over Epler and Billy made a decision on who the Mets manager is, that when Stearns came in, he would not right away shoo out Billy's guys, because that would, I get what you're saying, and I totally agree. And in most cases that happens. I just think because of their working relationship and personal relationship, that he wouldn't sweep out Billy's changes, because that kind of, throws water on Billy's decisions, right? And it would kind of minimize and kind of hurt their working relationship moving forward. Now, a guy like a Showalter, a guy like a Bochy, they're not young. It's probably not a guy that you're going to have for 5-6 years, right? So there's a really good possibility that if you brought in a guy like a Bochy or Showalter, you could also put on the coaching staff a guy like an Espada, right? If you wanted to move and groom this person to be the next manager. So if you did go with, a classic Coke, if you want a Coke classic, you'd still have room for new Coke on the bench in order to bring them up. Yeah. I personally love Buck Showalter. Brilliant guy. I enjoy listening to him as a commentator. Thought he's a great manager. He had nothing to do. Buck got multiple chances too. Buck had almost nothing to work with at the end in Baltimore. And he was really jobbed out of, good wrestling term, was jobbed out of an opportunity to take the Yankees all the way, because he got them to the next level. And then, they brought in Torrey, and they really didn't give Buck the opportunity to show what he could do. This would actually be baseball life for Buck's best opportunity to show what he can actually do in the big city on a team that's being prepared to go for the pennant. So definitely be an interesting choice to bring him in. I'm a big Bochy guy. I love Bochy as a manager. I can listen to him speak about baseball. He talked about a guy who had loyal coaches, Ron Wachtfuss and all the guys that surrounded him in San Francisco were fantastic, and they killed for him, and they did a great job and really unified, tight group. And apparently they had phenomenal communication with the front office and with each other and the players. And the reason why people respected Bochy was because with all the success he had, he never changed. He never, got on that high horse that some managers do. Dick Williams got on a high horse once upon a time. He totally lost it. He was in Boston. He thought he was so great after 67, went to Oakland and was fired because he lost the clubhouse, even though they won the World Series. He was so hard for players to deal with. He was basically run out of town in California. He was a rough and tumble guy, great manager, but players got tired of him. I don't think Buck is one of those guys. Bruce Bochy is certainly not. He would be the opposite. He's able to strategize like an Earl Weaver, like a Dick Williams, like a Sparky Anderson, but he's got a great hand with his players. So my number one choice would be Bochy. And I also think Bochy wouldn't want to do this for a long time because he was retired. So if you brought him back, it's probably a 3-year commitment, and he'd be a perfect guy to bring the next person along. And And I don't think a David Stearns, to bring it back around, would be uncomfortable with either a Buck Showalter or a Bruce Bochy because they're legends in the game, right? It's going to be interesting. I'm really curious because we talk about putting a stamp on an organization. It's really early, right? To be fair to Epler, it's really early in his tenure, right? He's been there 13 days. He's already brought in 4 players. If there was no lockout, he probably would be bringing in 7, 8, who knows how many, right? He's doing his due diligence, and he's doing it on the fly, and he's doing a really good job, in my opinion, of making a lot of things happen at once. And I think Steve Cohn and Sandy took a lot of heat unnecessarily. It's real easy when the new guy comes in with the big pockets to be a magnet for criticism. Inside the fan base, outside the fan base. Be fair to the fan base, we've had to deal with the Wilpons for so long. We are gun shy. We are. I mean, let's face it. We see someone coming in. New York's a show it to me town anyway. Prove it. Don't tell me what you're going to do. Show it. We really should be the show me, or they really. I'm not there anymore, but New York should really be the show me state, right? So Cohn got a bad rap, and all the guy wants to do is win. He's spending the money. He's taken the payroll to a level no one has gone to before, not just the Mets, nobody. He's not done. There's a good chance we bring in either Kikuchi or Rodon to fill out the rotation. There are a lot of moves made today. As we know, we talk about Marcus Stroman signed with the Cubs, Rich Hill signed with the Red Sox. Player movement is crazy in this last couple of minutes before the lockout. There's still some interesting arms out there. There's still some good bench pieces in play. The Mets are in play for Bryant. They're in play for a number of relievers, and they're in play to get potentially a starting pitcher from Oakland, especially if they did sign Bryant. They have more than enough pieces to make a trade with Oakland and move some people that way. So there's a lot going on, but it's all stopped, right? It's all stopped, dead in the water. So we will see now which way the organization is going to go with the choice of manager. Are they going young, hip? Let's get the next version or a better version in their eyes of Rojas leading this? Or do they go old school and bring in one of the masters and then hire someone on the coaching staff to be brought up? Be interesting.
So something we'll definitely have to keep an eye on. David Rubin is here. We're going to talk 401 Sports here shortly.
Yes.
But before, David, I just finished Joe Posnanski's book, The Baseball 100, which this gentleman gifted me about a month ago. Thank you, David.
You're very welcome.
Now, it's before
definitely come without it. Yeah.
I just want to say, because this was a blog post, over the last year, and the book is out. Is it? We can talk about the rankings, right? Or is it like a spoiler alert? Or is this common knowledge?
I don't think it's a spoiler alert. If the book had just come out and there was top secret piece to it, but the book is reprinting something that started almost 2 years ago in The Athletic.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because, I happen to love, for those who don't know, Joe Posnanski, big Royals fan, big Indians fan. Dwayne Kuiper is his favorite player. He's an incredible writer. He wrote an amazing book with Buck O'Neill before Buck passed. He was the biggest proponent, and then remains the biggest proponent to have Buck in the Hall of Fame. Brilliant baseball writer, big music guy, brilliant guy. He started some things that he never finished. And the first one was this baseball list. It started on his blog a number of years ago. He never finished it. Came over to write for The Athletic, and he actually did finish this particular task, which took more than 100 days. He ranked and wrote about substantially the 100 best baseball players in his eyes. Now, a couple of things to know about it. He didn't necessarily rank each player where exactly he felt they were in the pantheon of greats. Tom Seaver was number 41. Why would he put Tom Seaver at number 41, uniform number? He did a lot of that. There was a lot of people positioned to coincide with either uniform number or a year in which they did something. It wasn't the I'm going to rank this by war, right? Or by most records or any of that stuff. He ranked it by a number of different ways, but he took a lot of creative license, as any author should, right? He wasn't doing this to put on the Shredder on ESPN. On MLB Network. He wasn't doing it for an ESPN Insider article. He finished the task that he had started years before on his blog site, and he decided to tell what he felt were the best and most interesting stories about who he felt were the 100 best ball players. I'm sure, Joe, you found, as I did, there were a lot of players I wish he would have gone on for another 30, 40, 50 pages about. And there were a couple of others where we knew most of the stories already. But even if we knew the story, and I consider myself a baseball historian, I've read literally thousands of books. I've studied the game inside and out. And I will say, even when he was reciting the stories that were all too familiar, I still learned at least one thing in each one of those stories. My dad said to me, if you read a book and you liked one thing or you learned one thing in that entire book, even if the book wasn't your favorite, if you either liked one thing or learned one thing, then it was worth your time. And I would say in each one of those 100 entries, I learned at least one thing, and some of them I learned quite a bit more. And in some of them, that one thing was so substantial, right, that it made the whole book or the whole effort at that time worth it. And I will say that I read, and I actually still have printouts of about 23 of the 100 for when they were on The Athletic, and yet I still have it, got it day of, because if you talk about what is one book, we talk about Ball 4, Glory of the Times, what is one book to me every baseball fan should have? That's it. It's a brilliant, amazing book. I'm sorry for taking up that time, but Joey, I would love to hear what your thoughts are, having just gone through it for the first time.
So, I mean, I became a baseball fan in 1983, and I've made millions, if not dozens, of these lists in my head since I was a kid. By position, by team, and all this. When I was crafting the Utopian Baseball Universe rosters, I was making sure that I wasn't missing any of the big names. I love his approach of, putting DiMaggio 56 and Seaver 41. And they actually had a tie in the book. Schmidt and Frank Robinson were each 20. So I thought it was interesting. I can't argue with the 100 that he chose, obviously. And I'm happy because I've been having this Mays Ruth argument my whole life. And I've always been a Mays guy. And a lot of people have said Ruth is the number one. But there were a couple names that I was surprised didn't make the list. I don't even think these guys, in my opinion, are like fringe, like 100, 99, 102. I thought these guys would maybe even be top 50 or 60. And the two names that come to mind are Paul Molitor and Craig Biggio.
Yep.
Molitor, I've grown to appreciate more and more even since he's retired. I think he's one of the top 5 right-handed hitters of all time, just pure hitters of all time. And I had the pleasure of watching his early career in Milwaukee.
And he definitely suffered from it. He definitely suffered from the fact that he was injured a lot. And so as a result, a lot of people didn't appreciate that, he was a really good fielder who then had to become a DH. So I think to your point, he was one of and he had power. He had a lot more power than a lot of people remember that he did.
And he actually, if you talk about the injuries, if you give him back the 3.5 years he missed, we're talking about a guy who had 4,000 hits potentially.
Right.
And then Biggio, an all-star catcher, all-star center fielder, all-star second baseman. I think he's top 3 all-time in doubles. I think he's top 2 or 3 in hit batsman. Not that is, the measuring stick, but I was just surprised, because I was keeping track of who was representing which team. And I'm like, oh, he went Bagwell over Biggio, which, again, you can't argue with. But those were the only 2 that I was surprised at. I would have. I personally, I would have put Ichiro a little higher. I mean, that guy was just a wizard with a baseball bat.
I think it was mostly he was number 100 mostly because he only had 9 years in major league. So
Sure.
he got there. Interesting, he did get there as a combination of his prowess in Japan as well. Because if you remember, Sadahara is in, on a lot of his lists.
Yeah,
and he really, yeah.
Yeah, and so I just finished it today. It's wonderful. Thank you again for gifting that to me. And if anyone wants to read it, you guys know where I am. It's a fantastic book. So, David, tell us what is new in the world of 401 sports.
I will, but I just want to share for my fellow Met fans out there. Just was texted something, and I find this pretty awesome. And in the short time that he's been a part of the New York Mets organization, Billy Epler has transformed the perception of the Mets from an agent and club perspective. They're blown away by how honest and direct he is. They said Billy has no BS about him, and the Mets have become an organization that they are having an absolute ball talking with and engaging with, and so great and wonderful to hear, because there was a lot of issues with Porter leaving and Scott taking over, and who do they speak to, Scott or Sandy? Eventually, Sandy ceded a lot of control, but there were people who didn't like dealing with Sandy. He's a very bright guy. He can be truculent. He can be difficult, challenging to work with and deal with. Epler is changing the entire narrative as much as Steve Cohn is changing the entire narrative. And like anything else, do we need to win the World Series every year? No. Do we need to feel like we have the chance? Do we need to feel like our assets are being focused in that direction? That's what we need to hear, right? As fans, that keeps us interesting. That keeps us on the hook. That keeps us coming back with the opportunity to, contend all the time. Look, Milwaukee Brewers have done something Mets haven't done. 4 years in a row being in playoff contention with one of the smallest budgets in baseball. So I give David Stearns and Mark Antanasio so much credit. Those guys don't quit, and the fan base is great, and they deserve it because they were down and out for so long. Mets fans deserve it too. Forget about that it's New York. Forget the people who are anti-New York. Forget everything else. The Mets organization has taken way too many hits over the years, and it's not the fans' fault. Yep. I think any passionate fan base deserves to have their team win. Even if it's a team that I despise the most, that fan base still deserves the opportunity. Just the fact that Uncle Steve and Billy Epler are changing that narrative, to me, means that we've got that opportunity. And if nothing else, that's a much better place to be than we were last year at this time, or even the year, especially the year before. So with that, interestingly enough, we IPO'd Marcus Stroman this Monday. We did a Cyber Monday deal. We IPO'd him for only $1. His book value is $1.50, $1.45, and he sold out in seconds. And he didn't have a team. So all the people out there who were buying Marcus Stroman didn't know where he was going to be. It was a great deal. Had some amazing activity and some great things happening on the site. I know, Geeker, if you're watching, I hope you've been taking part in some of the amazing deals we've had in the last 2 weeks. Basically, for those who don't know, every week we offer anywhere from 2 to 5, sometimes even 6 IPOs, and they are active starting at 9 in the morning Pacific time, 12 Eastern every morning till they sell out. Today, for instance, we had Kyle Lowry, great point guard. Tomorrow, a guy by the name of Kyler Murray, great quarterback, coming out tomorrow. And on Friday, Damon Lillard, great forward with or forward guard. He's really just a great shooter with Portland. Next week, because we're gearing up for the holidays, we're gearing down for the holidays. We're only going to have 3 IPOs, but all 3 of them are absolutely sensational players. Derrick Henry, the best running back in football, will be next Monday. And interestingly, from what I understand, if they make the playoffs, which it looks like they will, there's a good chance Henry is back on the field in January, which is pretty amazing considering that 2-3 weeks ago they thought he was not going to be available till next year. And ironically, Joe, I know you're a football fan, I know you're a Packers fan. Ironically, Henry was still, he's been down for 8 weeks. Up until 2 weeks ago, he was still leading the NFL in rushing yards. So he's now second. He's now in second place. So he hasn't played in 8 weeks. It'll be 9 weeks this week, and he's still number 2 in rushing yards. Wednesday of next week, we have one of the best power forwards I've ever seen. A guy by the name of AD, Anthony Davis from the LA Lakers. He'll be available on Wednesday. And Friday of next week, let Russ cook. A guy from Seattle Seahawks, fantastic little guy. I shouldn't say little guy because he's taller than I am, which isn't hard, but he's one of the best quarterbacks that I've seen in my many years. If I were starting a team and I wanted a guy to just pop in and say this guy is going to be a winner, Mr. Russell Wilson. Great quarterback, great football player, charitable guy. So we've got only 3 next week: Derrick Henry, Anthony Davis, and Russell Wilson. And I think from now till the end of the year, just because we know people have a lot of other distractions and wonderful things happening in their lives, we're probably going to minimize the amount of IPOs that we issue and just probably do 2, 3, maybe 4 a week till the end of the year. And then once January comes, the hope is baseball will be back in play, in January, that there'll be an agreement and baseball will become relevant again. And then we can start looking at who we're going to start IPOing, and lots of them, because there's a lot of young players that will be brought up, depending on how the CBA goes. If there's going to be a floor, if there's going to be a salary floor, a lot of teams like Oakland and Pittsburgh and Tampa are going to have to sign bodies very quickly because they're so well under whatever that floor might be. Let's say it's eventually going to be $100 million. If they're at 40 or 50 or 60 million, then they're going to have to bring a lot of bodies into play very quickly. So there might be a lot more activity once they all come back than anyone even expected. But there is also going to always be a focus on young players. And for me in particular, the fun is, look, anyone can IPO Mike Trout, right? That's a no-brainer. I love finding the hidden gems, and we had a lot of them this year. I mean, we had all 3 of the guys who were in the Rookie of the Year race in the National League. We had IPO'd them. All 3 of the guys who were in the finalists in the American League Rookie of the Year race, we IPO'd them. A little guy pitching out of Milwaukee. What's that guy's name again? Cy Young Award winner?
Mr. Corbin Burns. We had IPO'd him. We had the MVP of the American League, Mr. Ohtani. We had 7 Silver Sluggers, 5 Gold Glove winners. And mind you, we just started, right? And these are all players that I had our team, selected in May, June, July, and we went active in September. So these are all players that we already had on our radar months before, and we knew, because we have a lot of people that work for us who are really experts in the field. They know the up-and-comers. They know the guys who are going to be, fantastic 5 years from now, 10 years from now, basically, right? It's a science, but, obviously you have to still get lucky, because we all knew Wander Franco was going to be a superstar, we thought, right? But how many times have we seen a great prospect all being heralded by everybody and then just fall on their ass repeatedly? It's happened too many times. We're blessed. We have a lot of good algorithms. We have a lot of really good experts that help us choose these people. So we'll go back to the future stars for baseball, probably January, February, as we get closer to spring training.
Next week, as I said, we have the 3. The week after that, I think we might have a couple of kind of out of the box IPOs. We're going to do a couple of less expensive ones with great future earning potential. People think about a person like Wander Franco or somebody like that who didn't have all the publicity and all the buildup to his career. Those are some of the players we'll probably be IPOing between now and the end of the year in baseball, football, and basketball. And sometime late this year or early next year, we're going to be adding hockey. Eventually, we will have the WNBA, which I'm really excited about, and tennis and golf and a whole bunch of other sports. We'll eventually have every sport going. It's just a matter of how fast can we add sports and add users, and we listen to what people tell us. We try to make things happen as best as possible. We still have a timetable we have to adhere to, and there's a lot of work that goes into the programming side. But we heard that a lot of people wanted some of the GOATs, some of the greatest of all time, and we issued Tom Brady and Mike Trout, and God, do those shares sell out quick? I mean, I was literally on my computer. 9 o'clock comes Pacific time. I put it on. Here's Tom Brady, and we have different messages that go across the top of the screen as it goes to 25%, 50%, then like 10% left. It did not take 6 seconds for all those messages to flash till he was sold out. I mean, it was insane. And if it could have been instant, if it could have been done in 1 second, Brady would have sold in 1 second. That's how crazy it was. So it happens. And I have to thank Joey. I have to thank you and your users who are a part of our 401 sports world. For those who don't know, it's like the stock market for sports. It's so much fun. When you play fantasy sports, the reason why I stopped, 2 reasons. One, I got kicked out of my league because I won 4 years in a row and they didn't want me to win again. Okay. That was kind of sucky, but I don't gamble on sports. I don't gamble on sports for one reason. I hate the idea of losing all my money in one game. They're mostly sucker bets. The house wins every time. There's a reason why the points are what they are in football. There's a reason why basketball games are lost and fortunes are lost on a single game. And I love the idea personally of being able to gamble or invest in, better word, a player who I believe in and I want to see do great over their career. Doesn't have to be on my team, just a player that I believe in. And I say, like when you go to buy baseball cards, right? What do? You buy your team's cards, but then you try to get the best players in the game and the players that you think are going to appreciate and value. It's the exact same thing. You want to buy the players that you think in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now are going to be Hall of Famers, will be worth the most money, give you the most return on the investment. And it's exciting because I wish I could play myself, Joey, because if I could, I think I would be up even more than some of the people who have already made like $400,000 and $500,000 on the site. At the low amount of money that we charge still, because it's still a relatively new game, at the low amount of money we charge per share for what a lot of these guys value currently is, it's almost impossible not to be up, not to have substantial games. And the great thing is, every day I look at the stats. Okay, who had a triple-double last night, right? And players that I used to not even care about as much are now excited because I say, oh, somebody that we've IPO'd already had a triple-double last night. That's so cool. And so I get to have a total new appreciation for players that I wasn't following as closely because, I'm not a Jokic fan. He's a great player, but I don't follow Denver. But I do now because I want to see what he does every night. And so I feel like I've rejuvenated back to the years like when I was 10, where the newspaper would come and I break open, go to the box scores, right? And I have to look at every box score, who had hits and who had home, every single player, every single team. I loved like Monday, Wednesday, Friday when they had because it wasn't every day for every paper when they listed the top 10 batting average, top 10 homers, top 10 RBIs. And I started following it from like the first week. I was excited when the first ones hit. So I have that same excitement now watching what some of these players are doing every night. And as I said, you're going to have a lot of fun because instead of investing in a stock that you don't know anything about, like if I said, Joey, go invest in 5 oil companies and talk to me for an hour about each one, about, what are they great at? What are they doing? Where's their oil coming from? What kind of green practices do they have? You're going to look at me like I'm insane, like you're doing right now, right? And if I said, Joey, give me an hour on a baseball player, I'd have to cut you off at an hour and you'd still have more to be able to say.
Exactly.
So, that I think that's the great fun of it, is that you're putting your money in an opportunity like a stock market. And like a stock market, it could go up, could go down. Nothing's guaranteed. But the stocks are doing so well, and the book value is always there and is guaranteed. And it's a reputable company and has a lot of integrity. And big part of what we do, we have a giving component. And in 2022, we're going to be able to unleash some of the charitable components that we're been ramping up to. So to be able to help people in fantasy sports make money, to allow current and co-fans to have a great time, to be able to enjoy investing in a player's career and having a personal attachment, if you will, to their careers. It's a lot of fun. And the fact that you're not losing all your money because of one game or one crooked referee. I didn't say that, did I? It means that you're not going to have, all your money go out the window and hate life. By the way, it seems like Chris Taylor has officially agreed to a deal with the Dodgers, removing one more player from the free agent market. We did IPO him too. He did very well, very quickly. Yeah.
Nice. So if anyone's watching this now, we have a pinned announcement at the top of the page within the Facebook group on how to set up an account with 401 Sports. It's really easy. I set up my account in like 3 minutes a couple months back. So we encourage you to do that. And
you do get a referral bonus. So that's why I don't want you to just go on. Please don't just go on 401 Sports and sign up there. Please use that link so that way you get some money back. There's some matching funds available for you. I know Geeker had that, and some of the other guys here have had that. So please, I encourage you to do it that way. So that way we know for sure that, our good fans and friends over here at Utopian are going to be able to get, some reward for doing it.
Really cool. And David's going to be with us. We'll try to get together every week if we can. Sometimes life happens, but we're going to try to shoot for Wednesdays going forward. So David, it was great talking with you again about the Mets. And
I didn't sing as well as your last guest.
Oh,
and
he
was great. A lot of fun. I love his I'm Cheap song. That was pretty clever.
I actually have a shirt of his that says "I'm cheap" in the closet.
Nice.
He was selling merch a couple years ago, and I said, "Yeah, let's get the biggest one you got of that one." So
nice.
All right. So again, David and I will be back hopefully next Wednesday to talk. Yep. Maybe we'll have a manager in place. Maybe we won't. We'll see what kind of development have been going on with this this potential lockout that is, I guess, destined to happen in about 3.5 hours.
And Joe, it'd be pretty cool if we could get some feedback. I know we talk Mets and Brewers a lot and some Angels, but we can talk about any team. So if there are people out there who want to either have us give some insight into their team, their organization, we'd love to do that. And B, if you want to get involved and join the conversation, we'd love to be able to have you come on and talk with us, pose a question, give us your thoughts. I think it would be great. I get tired. I mean, I don't get tired of looking at your face, but I certainly get tired of looking at my own. So if we could have some other people come on with us, it would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, if you're watching now, if you're a fan of a team that we haven't discussed here on the 401 Sports Show, let us know. We'd be happy to have you on or talk about your team, because this is the place to discuss all things baseball on Wednesday nights in the Utopian baseball universe. So, David, again, thanks for sharing the airwaves with me again tonight. David, by the way, is going to be a guest on Having a Catch later in the year. He's going to be, I don't know if we talk January, February, but David's going to be one of our guests. He's going to give us a tour of this room he's sitting in right now, all this great Mets merchandise. If you guys
baseball merchandise,
yep. in about 5 or 10 minutes, we're going to see a teaser for our first episode, which is airing Tuesday with Dan Byrne. Dan and I filmed a couple teasers last night, so that's gonna post in 5 minutes. But again, David, thanks for being here, and we'll see you again Wednesday.
Absolutely, Joe. Everyone out there, be safe, be happy, be healthy.
All right, and I'll be back tomorrow at 5:30 for the Utopian Cafe. Everyone have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Good night, boys.